Well, welcome to the Keeping It Israel podcast. My name is Jeff, and I'll be your host today. And my guest today is Avie Esakov. Avie is a tour and travel agent. He has what he calls unique and inspiring journeys working for Peerless Travel in the International Heritage Tours division. Avie and I have known each other probably for about 15 years now, and we in the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada, the denomination that I am a part of, affectionately refer to Avie as Mr. Israel. So Avie, welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you, Jeff. That's a great introduction. I appreciate it.
Well, we are happy to have you on again. You've been on here with me before. I think the last time we talked about some new discoveries up in the Galilee area. But today we are going to discuss the protocols surrounding travel to Israel. There have been a lot of changes. This has been somewhat of a moving target over the last little while in terms of, trying to figure out what's happening. But give us a little bit of a synopsis of what is currently happening for foreign tourists in Israel, and of course, particularly those coming from Canada and the USA.
So starting towards the beginning of March, the Ministry of Tourism and the Ministry of Health allowed incoming operators to put forward names of groups that would be part of a pilot to see how the protocols that were stricter in March and then have eased up a little bit, but not too far over the month of April and May. And then in June and July, the protocols were eased up a little bit because so many more people are vaccinated. And so basically, the bottom line is you're vaccinated, the protocols are easier, or somewhat easier, and we hope that they'll get better as we go along. So the protocols that are correct on the 21st of July are sort of like still a work in progress. We're waiting for an update from the Israel Ministry of Tourism in all questions related to opening Israel to tourism. Currently in Israel, the variants that have returned have wreaked some havoc. And as a result, we're witnessing increased numbers of infections, although on the positive side, it appears that these current infections are not nearly as severe as the initial outbreak of the pandemic. So the current entry protocols that we'll go over in a moment might change. And for instance, there's a serological test for tourists with the FDA-approved vaccinations, which might not be required for specific listed green countries, and happy to say that currently Canada appears to be one of those green countries. So the following is present information that's available. It relates to the current entry protocols, and it might prevail until such time that the Israeli authorities, that's the government, release an official statement that change the protocols. We have reason to believe that should there not be any further negative epidemic developments, might occur on August 1st or in the first 2 weeks of August.
Okay. The serological test that you're talking about that may not be required coming in the next weeks, that is actually a blood test, correct? That's the fingerprint test at the airport?
So what I encountered when I came, as soon as I realized that double vaccination allowed me to go, I booked and went. Serological test that I had was a blood test. So I would say there are 3 or 4 steps to the protocol and the different documentation that is required. And so the first important issue is that participants are going to have to provide a copy of their vaccination record. And it is only those that are recognized by the FDA and Europe's EMA that are accepted, like Moderna and Pfizer, and the requirement there is 2 doses.
Can we clarify, because this has come up recently, actually just in a news article that I read this morning, that certain cruise lines down in the U.S. are not allowing Canadians to travel who have had a mixture of doses, AstraZeneca and either Pfizer or Moderna. Have the Israeli government said whether or not that will be allowed? Because many Canadians have gotten one, like Pfizer first and Moderna second, or that kind of thing. So I just thought I'd throw that one at you while we're talking.
Okay, so I'm not aware of that issue coming up in Israel so far. What we do know is that if required, the participant is going to have to provide evidence of the 2 doses. So when you get the vaccination and you get to little pages that do that, then that's something that one has to keep in mind. Then we have to have full passenger information, which generally we have as it is, as a matter of course, on every journey, where we require a photocopy of the passports open to the validity page. We do recognize and have advised most of our travelers that your passport has to be valid for at least 6 months from the date of your return to your country of origin. So that's a requirement as well that we're going to have to submit along with Sar-El to Israel's Ministry of Health and Tourism. They also are going to require passengers to provide a list of destination countries that they visited 14 days prior to entering Israel. What Israel wants here is to make sure that no one visited a red country or a forbidden country. And the list is provided in a website that I will forward you shortly in a document. And the high risk tag on that link is forbidden countries. And if you enter one of those countries, you're not allowed to enter into Israel. We recommend also avoiding those countries that might appear under a warning tag, because most often over the last 4 months, countries that appeared under a warning tag then changed red like 3 days later, kind of thing. So that's another issue that we're going to have to address. The serological test, which is a blood test now, will be booked. The PCR test at the airport is booked by each individual. Sar-El and our company will book the serological test, and there's a PCR test that's administered within 72 hours of your return for entry into Canada. So those 2 are included in the cost. And at the moment, the serological test takes 6 to 8 hours to get results. Now, it looks most likely, and I've seen that now from about 5 or 6 different incoming tour operators, where they mention that the serology test is going to be changing to a finger prick, and the results will be available within 15 to 20 minutes. And that basically means that within that time frame, you're still in the airport. And if there's no need for isolation, we start touring. The little complicated issue is going to be an appendix called a tourist declaration and consent to the conditions of entry into Israel. It's made up of 2 parts. One part you read and go through and you authorize that. It's very similar to the entry into Canada, where you've got this like 15 or 16 items that you confirm that that these are the items that you agree to. And then in order to get the group entry allocation, there's going to be a power of attorney that is limited to only this particular document. And so the second stage of this document, page 3, is where you give power of attorney to the specific tour operator in Sar-El to handle that group entry request. So that is going to be something that we're going to need as well, which is like a signed document that will be provided to our office in Canada and then passed on to the office in Mevaseret, just near Jerusalem. Now, while the flight details don't have to be final, in a group scenario, the flight details are final. So that's a given. So that's the first and initial documentation required, which basically goes via IH Tours and Sar-El to the government offices required. Then the other step, or the next issue, is what participants are going to need to have and provide copies of. So these are details that are important, and we'll go through this again once we address the journey and people have registered. But basically, participants have to have a valid travel insurance policy that includes medical health and specific COVID coverage. And it's most likely that a copy of the policy might be required. I wasn't required to present it. I'm a returning Israeli. I'm not a tourist. It might be different. And in Canada, participants are going to have to go through a PCR test within 72 hours of travel, not a minute before and not 2 hours before. I made the mistake in March of getting that test done 74 hours prior, and I was denied boarding. So this is very, very important that we go along with the requirement that it's within the 72-hour frame and not beyond that.
Just to clarify, the 72 hours is from the time of departure?
Correct.
Or the time of arrival in Israel?
The time of departure. Because it's boarding the plane that governs the timeline, and so that timeline is going to be when you leave Canada or when you leave Pearson Airport. So it's within 72 hours, which generally speaking, I would say, let's do it within the 3-day framework of the journey, or perhaps better still, 2 days. And if people see that 2 days is a little too much pressure, then within that 3rd day, but not at the beginning of it, like middle or end of the 3rd day. Right.
So Avie, for example, if we're leaving on a Sunday at, say, 7:15 p.m., so you go back 3 days, Saturday, Friday, Thursday, 7:15 p.m. So really,
it's a
you would have to have it
Friday,
done
Saturday.
Sometime on the Friday would be the best, right?
Yes, Friday, Saturday would be the best.
Okay.
The other issue that participants have to complete individually on a Ministry of Health website is a complete online health declaration, which is required by Israel's Ministry of Health. So those are the things that one does before flying. And then when you arrive at the airport, there's a PCR test that's administered once you go through passport control. If I remember correctly, it was just after I picked up my luggage. I'd prefer to have that before we pick up the luggage. But it was administered from when I was there after we picked up the luggage. And there's an online company that one can register with to have the PCR done upon arrival. And if you register ahead of time online, it costs 80 shekels, which is probably $15 US. And if you don't book it online and you arrive at the airport, it's another $3. It's 100 shekels. And this can be paid at the airport.
Okay.
If there is a self-isolation report that has to be submitted, Sar-El will do that on behalf of the participants. And in a link that I'll provide, you'll see what that form looks like. You're also required to do a PCR test within 72 hours before you return home. This is the test, along with the serology test upon arrival, that is included in the cost, and Sar-El sets that up for us. So basically, it's a 3-step that we have, and that covers the current protocols of entry. 2 days ago, in the news, there was a headline that read, the current Minister of Tourism, and he's only been in the office for like 3 or 4 weeks, has recognized that the $6 to $7 billion worth of income from tourism has been sorely lacking for too long a time. And that's sort of like a headline that was made. It remains to be seen what will happen. The upside of this current government is that the current Prime Minister is from high tech, and he's used to taking cutting-edge decisions. The Foreign Minister is a previous newspaper reporter, and they both so far have indicated a pretty rational way of thinking. So it could be that over the next 2 to 6 weeks, we might see, because of the economic impact of no tourism, we might see a change to the protocols. It could work out that, and again, because the current wave of infection has been relatively easy on people who are vaccinated and get the COVID, it could very well be that should they extend the vaccination, and they are now, to kids under 16, and Israel is in that procedure right now, once they get to herd vaccination, it could very well be that Israel won't require a vaccination any longer, and that'll open up a whole new aspect for incoming tourism. But that still is a bit of a way to go.
I think what people listening need to understand is that the protocols that you've just outlined, these are in place currently for groups that are approved to go to Israel. And our hope is, our optimistic hope is that as we move forward in time, those will only get better in terms of maybe a little bit more relaxed. And so I think that if people understand those three basic things, the test before you leave, within the 3 days, 72 hours before departure, 2 tests when you arrive, and then a test as you're leaving Israel again. I think if everybody sort of keeps that in mind, and of course, when we do let people know that we're touring, we'll give them all the information they need. We'll make sure that everyone has the pertinent protocols and give them lots of instruction.
One more second, because currently entry of tourism is sort of like restricted to groups that have been requested by various incoming tour operators as a pilot project to enter Israel. This started in March. Sar-El Tours, which is the unit or the organization that we work with, have had 5 or 6 such groups. And I'm told that one group from Florida, Spanish speaking, was 90 people strong. And they brought the 90 people, like 6 to 8 weeks from the decision that they could come. They got 90 people to come. The good part of all these pilots, and this is over the board. In other words, the Ministry of Health has indicated that all the PCR tests that are done 72 hours before departure have shown good results. There hasn't been anyone who was affected with COVID while touring Israel, and that's a really good statistic. That's
amazing. And that should help allay people's anxiety over some of that. I think that that's a good thing for people to know as well. Now you came to me a little while ago, and you had an idea and an opportunity for First Century Foundations to host a tour within 2021. So we're talking about this today, and we're going to, I guess, make an official announcement and let people know that we're moving forward. So tell us what's happening.
Okay, so what is happening right now is that we're doing our utmost as our incoming tour operators to maintain those groups that we have rescheduled for October and November. A good friend of mine had a journey that was scheduled for December 1, and he called and apologized and said, look, he generally travels twice a year. So he had 2 journeys, one December and one February lined up, February 2022. And he apologized. He said, look, I'm not sure what's going on, but I've had very little interest at all in a 2021 journey. So I'm going to focus my strength on the 2022 February, and please accept my apologies. And that's when I contacted you. And then subsequently, we found that if we moved the flight from Air Canada to El Al, we could save in excess of $200 per person, which is quite impactful at this particular junction. And so we set up a 10-day journey, which covers virtually every aspect that we like to cover in Israel. And then you and I spoke about Samaria, and having visited Shiloh 2 weeks ago, I came into contact with a young lady from the Samaria Touring Division, and Sandra Barras will accompany us on an optional tour that we've added on the Day of Leisure in Jerusalem. So generally speaking, our journeys always have a day of leisure in Jerusalem. Over time, I've learned from the groups that they really love the day just to go out and do their own thing in Jerusalem. Several groups have asked for options on that day. And so we've had odd options available. And generally speaking, there's been between a 50 to 60% response, positive response for any kind of optional touring that we offer on the Day of Leisure. So I'm hoping that we can tour the areas of Shiloh, the Kingdom of Israel's capital, Samaria, visit with Samaritans that are a unique community in a wonderful area, and then continue to visit one of the Jewish settlements that are in the area of Samaria based on this idea that we resettle an area that was so crucial to the Kingdom of Israel.
Amazing. Now, I'm excited about this opportunity, and I'm really, really hoping and praying that we can get enough interest to be able to go. The dates are December 5th through the 14th. And this would be a great early Christmas present if you want to send one of your loved ones, or, it'd be a Christmas present to yourself. This is an amazing opportunity. And many of you have been desperately hoping that travel will happen again. And we're here to tell you in 2021, it is a reality. And, things are beginning to open up even right now, which we're very encouraged about. But by December, this is just going to be a great time for us to travel to Israel together. So, Avie, give us some details about pricing. And before Avie does that, I just want to throw out a little bit of a teaser for the Samaria option. If you have never been to Samaria, if you've never visited Shiloh or Mount Gerizim, Mount Ebal, this is an amazing opportunity for you. There is an additional cost. However, we've been able to lower the price of the journey from our initial conversations because of the LL tickets, so that really the Samaria journey almost as like as it's included. So, Avie, tell us the details around the pricing and what we need from people in order to get them on this list.
Okay, so the cost per person is 3,657 Canadian per person, which includes the 690 airport tax and fuel surcharge. It's based on two people sharing a room and a minimum of 16 participants. You'll be flying on direct, non-stop, luxurious LL flights, Toronto, Tel Aviv, Toronto. Then we're expecting or hoping that, I was so anxious to get to Israel, I knew that as soon as I could, I would get on a plane and go. I'm hoping that there are more people crazy like me who will do the same, or more people who have that pent-up feeling of being locked up for too long and we want to get out. So hopefully we can, and at 24 participants, we provide a reduction of $200 per person. So the cost will be $3,457. And then at 32 participants, a further reduction of $50 per person. These reductions will be applied to the invoices, and so the final payment will indicate, or will have that indication of how many people and what reductions are available. Should anyone require a single room, or unfortunately not have a partner to travel with, the single room supplement is only $779. So we go back to another requisite that I'm going to again go into, because while people aren't obliged to purchase travel insurance from us, Israel, under the protocols now, does require that all tourists secure an all-inclusive medical travel insurance policy that includes COVID-19 medical coverage. Now, we work with a company called Old Republic, and if people do buy an Old Republic all-inclusive policy that includes medical, and they're under 74 years of age, they may purchase an Old Republic medical waiver to cover COVID-19. Should anyone get COVID-19 and as a result their journey is canceled, that's covered as an event under that waiver. If the Canadian federal government in the interim will remove the restriction on unnecessary travel, the travel advisory, it could very well be that we might not have to purchase that waiver. The difficulty is that there are timelines to purchase. And generally speaking, travel insurance should be purchased within 24 to 48 hours of paying your deposit, or as soon as you can. And so if 2 months later, the federal government removed the restriction, the COVID waiver has been paid for and granted, we won't be able to refund that waiver. But the waiver is really not a very expensive cost. I'll get to it. I think it's $52 per person. The rate quote is based on a rate of exchange to the US dollar for land services that is 125 to a US. Should that fluctuate drastically, and it doesn't look like that's going to be the case, because economically Canada's economy, because of internal tourism now, has gone stronger than before. It's a weird kind of scenario, and so the Canadian dollar is stronger against the US dollar.
Okay, all right. Well, that's all great information, and I would encourage, as Avie said, that you do consider good coverage for your travel insurance. Some of you may have group insurance. If you do, you need to find out specifically from them about COVID coverage, whether or not there's anything included. And it would be very, very important for you to sort of learn those details. But here's what we're excited about. Everything's in place. We have, if you go to our website right now, firstcenturyfoundations.com, and click on tours, you will find the itinerary and also some links for you to download the forms that Avie would need in order to get you registered and get your deposit paid and all of those things. Also, the insurance rates are listed on those documents as well. And so we're excited. We're hoping that we can get the number of people that we need to move forward. And I should also mention, while we're chatting here, that a friend of ours, friend of Avie's, and a friend of mine, Dr. Bill Morrow, will be co-hosting this tour with my wife and I. And we are excited to have Dr. Morrow with us. And Bill has served in many ways in the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada. He was the Dean of Students when I was in Bible college way back in the 1980s. He has pastored in churches, been the district superintendent in Western Ontario, the general superintendent of the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada, and has also been the president of Masters College and Seminary for a transition time as well. And Bill has just got incredible, what's the word I'm looking for? Credibility in the PAOC, and he's also
connections.
And he's also a great guy. So
wonderful connections.
Yeah, we look forward to co-hosting with Bill, and we'll have to perhaps do a podcast with him in the next little while as well, so that we can share a little bit more together about the trip. Avie, anything else we need to let people know?
Yes, one last thing. On the application, when you scroll down or look at the second page, we have what IH Tours has put into place called a Carefree Payment Protection Plan for new bookings. It is not travel insurance, but what we're offering at a cost of $99 per person is that if you cancel for any reason up to 35 days prior to departure, you'll get a refund less than $99 paid for the Carefree Protection Plan. Should force majeure have IH Tours have to cancel up until 35 days prior to departure, the $99 of that CPPP will be refunded as well. And so there is the opportunity, realizing that people might be hesitant because of the so the current situation has been economically that most travel companies, most cruise liners, most airlines have not given a refund for payments made prior to, I think it was April of 2020. And so we've had a spate of butting heads with the various vendors to see what we can do. And then people might be aware of the fact that Air Canada announced a refund program. And then 10 days ago, they stopped the refund program. And so once again, if somebody didn't have the wherewithal to go to Air Canada and get a refund, then now Air Canada once again are not giving a refund. So the Carefree Payment Protection Plan will give people that extra sense of economic quiet. Should something happen, the money will be refunded to them.
I personally feel that $99 is very reasonable for the peace of mind that you will get, as you're investing your, $3,700 to $4,000 for the trip, an extra $99 to know that should something happen, that the trip has to be canceled or that you are not able to go or whatever. It's a great option for anyone who's considering traveling. Well, Avie, this has been great, and I do want to give you one more opportunity just in a second here, in case there's anything that we've missed. But I want to say that we are excited that we're going to be traveling again. Actually, my wife and I will, God willing, be in Israel for most of the last part of October. And into the middle of November. We'll travel home for a couple of weeks and then head back on the tour. But we're very, very excited that we get to go back. And I know that for many who are itching to travel, this will be a great opportunity for you to consider a tour in 2021. It's a little bit tight. We usually have a year to plan for something like this. So I want to say to you, if you're listening, get on this right away. Space is limited. Time is limited, and we want to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to be a part of the journey. So our website, firstcenturyfoundations.com, click on tours. And Avie, I want you to give information for your site as well, if folks can go there and find out any information. But we're just excited to be working together. And let us know, is there anything else that we've missed? What else do we need to know before we sign off here today?
Well, as you know, that you and I discussed the itinerary, and Pastor Bill, who was scheduled to travel in December, didn't like the idea of baptism in December, so we didn't have the Yardenit Baptism Center on the journey. And then together with Isaac, the guide that you've been working with, he and I went through the itinerary and we fitted it in to the best of our ability, both of us thinking, and we have reason to believe that it's doable, to do that on that third day of the journey, which is essentially the first day one travels towards the Galilee. So going from Nazareth towards the Sea of Galilee, one will stop for baptism. And Isaac's a great guide. I've known Isaac for a long time. Mind you, we haven't communicated for a long time either. So we really look forward to breaking bread with you, Bill, Sharon, Bill, and the whole group in Israel. I'll make a point of being with you guys because I value a 2021 journey to Israel. And I think that if a church in Florida can get 90 folk within 6 to 8 weeks, perhaps we can get to our 32 with not too much of an effort.
Well, we are excited to move forward. And so can we confirm that Isaac is available and will be our guide? Has Isaac confirmed that?
Yes. Isaac's confirmed that. And he and I conferred about
awesome.
Where to put the Yardenit. Yeah, no. He's confirmed.
Perfect. Well, for those of you who are listening or watching and you watch our show, First Century Foundations, Isaac Karasanti has often appeared with me on the show. And I know that many of you who have called in the past and said, hey, when's the next tour with Isaac? I've hedged a little bit because I'm never sure about his availability. But now post-COVID, everybody's available. And so Isaac is going to be our guide, and I'm thrilled to be able to say that. And so those of you who have listened to Isaac, watched Isaac, and want to be a part of this, this is your opportunity to have Isaac as your guide for sure. So very, very good. And Avie, thanks so much again for being with us on the podcast today. And I know you and I will be chatting back and forth a fair bit in the next while. But this is going to be a fun journey. I'm really looking forward to it.
On Passover Seder, generally speaking, the Jewish people say next year in Jerusalem. I prefer to say this year in Jerusalem.
Yes, this year in Jerusalem. Fantastic. Well, Avie, thanks again, and God bless.
Thank you, and looking forward to breaking bread in Jerusalem.
Israel. That meaningful name is mentioned more than 2,300 times in the Bible. It is from this land, nation, and people that Christianity emerged some 2,000 years ago. But since that time, Christianity has become mostly disconnected from Israel, and without an understanding of the Jewishness of Jesus and our Hebraic foundations, so much of the depth and meaning of the Bible is lost. First Century Foundations is committed to helping Christians reconnect and stay connected to Israel. We invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can view our TV programs and weekly video podcast, Keeping It Israel. Follow us on Facebook and our other social media platforms. Let's reconnect to Israel and stay connected. Find out more at firstcenturyfoundations.com.